And now we're going to listen to the last presentation. There will be just one presentation delivered by 4 people. A presentation of a project of prevention of electronic aggression. If that was an interdisciplinary project. Now, the results of the first stage of quantitative and qualitative research is going to be presented, and this is an interdisciplinary project run by the Warsaw University, Daje Młodzieżą Siłę Foundation, the Warsaw Technical University, and the Institute of Medicine. And now I'd like to give the floor to Anna Szuster from the Warsaw University, Julia Barlińska from the Warsaw University, Magdalena Szerzyńska from the Warsaw Technical University or Polytechnic, and Mr. Jacek Pyżalski from the Labor Medicine Institute. Good afternoon, welcome ladies and gentlemen. I'll have a pleasure to present the basic assumptions concerning our project, which is related to prevention of electronic aggression among Polish teenagers. What Kasia has not mentioned is that the project is financed by the National Center for Research and Development, and as far as we know, this is the first interdisciplinary project concerning this topic, that is cyberbullying in Poland. As has been said, this is an interdisciplinary but also intersectoral project, because there are 3 institutions, the Warsaw University, the Institute of Labor Medicine in Łódź, and the Warsaw Technical University, but also 2 NGOs, Pro Esterno Foundation, who is the leader of the project, and Foundation. So this project is going to take into account psychology, pedagogics, and information security, and our end objective will be to establish an integrated program focusing on the methods of counteracting cyberbullying. And the basic assumptions are as follows. Our project assumes review and evaluation of the existing solutions and methods counteracting cyber threats and aggression. We're going to focus on 3 areas, namely individual and social competences and their development, reduction of risk factors and modification of behaviors. This is the area of pedagogy, and it's going to be the responsibility of the Institute of Labor Medicine in Łódź. And the third area will be the level of maturity in the area of security, privacy, and accountability. The project is targeted at students and teachers. And what effects do we expect? On the basis of the results of the research which we're conducting, we are going to establish a prevention and educational project which is going to be evaluated and the pilot phase, and the result, the end result, should be a free of charge program which is going to be provided to all teachers in Poland together with a manual. As has been said already, we would like to share with you the results and the conclusions from the first task of our project, and here we have 3 areas that we would like to share with you, and the 3 remaining speakers are going to describe these issues to you. Pedagogy, that is the behaviors of the youth online from the point of view of witness, victim, and perpetrator of cybercrime, peer cybercrime. Then we're going to talk about security of information, and I'd like to give the floor to Jacek Pyżalski. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have 5 minutes to present comprehensive results of a study, so I'm just selecting certain issues. What we know about cybercrime in Poland and in Europe is based on quantitative studies. So we look at different graphs and we say that the youth has done this and that. But I'm going to focus on the qualitative results, at least the selected ones, that things that we've been able to discover or confirm and which we need in order for our program to be to reflect reality. Well, of course, it's difficult to conduct such study or such research because this requires trust of different people. We found a group who has done something serious, that is, that they were perpetrators of cybercrime, and we conducted long interviews with them, like 40 minutes interviews. We asked them what they thought, what contacts with the victim they had. We also talked to the witnesses and to the victims. And such research teaches us a lot. We learn a lot of what we need for the practical program. Because if we just see what the frequency is, it's very difficult to translate something like that into specific tasks or steps to be taken. But qualitative studies may give us better suggestions. So frequently when we're talking about cybercrime, we focus on the strongest problems, like, for example, sharing some new photograph, etc., etc. So extreme cases, in other words. Here we see that the range is very broad. Sometimes there are very trivial things, like somebody has made a nasty comment writing that I'm an idiot, for example. There are also those cases of photographs being shared. So usually in such programs you discuss the most extreme situations, but actually what should be discussed is how it starts, something that can constitute the origin of the problem. So we should focus on everyday issues, everyday problems, rather than the extreme ones. Because frequently, well, those extremes are shown, and then we comment, well, we shouldn't do that, etc., etc. Now, the second thing is that there are different levels of making somebody a victim. Sometimes you can see serious trauma in the case of the victims, and this has been confirmed by our research. Cyberbullying with the element of sexuality, especially if the victim's photographs are shared. Well, in the research of traditional bullying, when there is an element of sexting, this also strengthens the possibility for such a situation to make somebody a victim. So teachers frequently asked, I mean, where should we report such a situation to the relevant authorities? Well, we can also show that based on our research. Now, collective activities. In the traditional bullying and in cyberbullying, there is this phenomenon that somebody starts doing something and others follow. And, well, like, for example, giving the likes. Somebody thinks about something stupid and others would like that. Sometimes it's just a thoughtless action. I mean, this is like, you know, the thoughtless actions taken in group. And we have to wonder how to prevent something like that. Sometimes one person doing something different will be enough to change the behavior of the group. Sometimes we need to address witnesses, not necessarily perpetrators or the victims. This also is quite an important finding which will need to be taken into account in our program. And also lack of thought. Like, for example, my colleagues bullied me, that they are stronger than I am, etc., etc. So For example, a smart young person who does interesting things, who socializes well, etc., becomes a perpetrator of something stupid, and this person cannot even explain why. This is quite important, because a question arises here. Now, we have these findings, but what to do with them in practice? I mean, how to make young people think about what they do, to reflect on what they do. This is not easy. I mean, it's easy to find the facts, but it's more difficult to translate these into specific educational activities. Now, online and offline, we increasingly frequently notice that we should not divide these two things. I mean, like if we focus on cybercrime only, it's like hidden message that you can harm your colleague provided that you don't use your telephone for this purpose. So sometimes you have face-to-face bullying. So what is important are the programs related to relationships, not necessarily online relationships, because we are interested in the entire pie rather than just a piece of it. And now Professor Schuster is going to tell you how we check all these things from the point of view of psychology. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing quite a difficult task. Jacek has mentioned a lack of thought or lack of reflection many times, and we would like to cope with it somehow. And we actually found two targets here. We should improve certain psychological competences, self-control, and taking the social perspective. So this is something that can be developed and improved, and at the same time these are the two competences which increase reflection. Now to tell you more about these two constructs. Well, taking the perspective. Well, this is a process where the observer registers the feelings and motivations of or an individual or a group of persons, and recognizes the different point of view of these persons. Well, there are a number of elements here. Non-verbal behaviors, following the mimics of the second person. We do this very commonly when we interact with another person, but we may also have more advanced processes like the theory of the mind, when we try to predict what our interlocutor can think, or what this person is about to do. Now, this is a multidimensional process, and this gives us a chance to have a broad platform to propose different actions and influences. This is a developmental process. I mean, the child starts following somebody's eyes. This is a very important, absolutely necessary element of taking the perspective. But what it leads to is the ability to decentrate. At the same time, it's the process where a given person can try to imagine how the other person feels in a given situation. But at the same time, people differ in their motivations for taking the perspectives or their ability to take the perspective of other person. What is also very important is that you can take somebody's perspective via yourself. So you can ask yourself a question: how would I feel in such a situation? And the proof that this involves reflection is that when you take somebody else's perspective, the part of the brain which is responsible for reflection is activated. Now, self-control. This is the second actor of our program in the psychological part of it. And this also is a very complex set of competences. This is the ability to curb your emotions and impulses, to defer gratification, to take control. And this also is a behavior that brings you closer to achievement of your objectives. And here we have coincidence between the neuronal level and the activity of the brain. Now, the premises for efficient and effective self-control that can be useful for our purposes is that this is prone to influences. And in the research regarding the abilities of girls and boys, we can see that the two groups do not differ too much in their ability to do that. We may have building of the feeling of effectiveness and aspirations, and it's connected to self. Well, I skipped one slide. But, well, at the last slide we have the summary. We believe that both these constructs, that is self-control and taking perspective, prove, and our quantitative studies confirm that they both reduce aggression. Taking the perspective reduces distortions related to perception of other people, enhances conflict solving, and it's frequently used as a preventive program in reducing offline aggression. It also is conducive for better perception of the situation of other persons. And it gives a very important thing, and then be freedom. Freedom from reacting to instant situational factors. The person becomes more autonomous. As for self-control, it reduces aggression, but it also increases resistance and flexibility in coping with the problems. Build self-assessment and certainty of the self-assessment, because it's not only how high you evaluate yourself, but it's also very important how certain you are about what you think of yourself. And, well, persistence is also very important, which is very valuable in the case of adolescents. And what is also very important, shaping of self-control can be subject to social influences. So observation of behaviors of others who demonstrate self-control seems to be very important for modeling of such behaviors in youth. Thank you very much. So, I've already been introduced. Well, probably my colleague who worked on this part of the project with me is going to interrupt me and add something to what I'm going to say. Information security is the third, a little bit untypical part of the project. Well, this is a very diverse part, but we're going to make the contribution to the end project. In our first task, we focused on obtaining information, of learning how children behave in school workshops, but also in reading rooms and computer classes. We realize that those behaviors that we would like to prevent or restrict happen in the space which we do not have access to as the researchers. I mean, kids use their smartphones, tablets, iPads, etc. But some part of this space is available to us because something is also happening at school when children have free time and they have access to school equipment. It's also the matter of responsibility of the school for such behaviors that may then turn into very difficult and even criminal situations. Well, as part of our first task, we visited 10 schools. This is a summary at a certain date. Today we have more of these schools. And what did we do there? We conducted interviews with the teachers, but we also applied the methods which we normally use in different tasks which we conduct in other areas. So we took the audit approach, and we also used the tools used by IT investigators. And in this way, we collected the data from the school computers used by students in IT rooms, and also in reading rooms and students' clubs where kids use such equipment with almost no supervision of adults. That is in a very similar manner in which in which they use their smartphones, etc. So here we can see the summary of the information that we've collected. There are things there which, well, people believe they deleted, but we can recover such information. The amount of the material is huge, so probably it will take us another 5 years to analyze all this information, also from many different other points of view, not necessarily those related to the project. What we wanted to assess the level of maturity and possibility of providing security in all those places that are used by students. And that turned out to be quite a difficult task because of the nature of the school community. I mean, the known problems with management, financing, providing support to teachers of technical subjects. All those had to be taken into account, and the evaluation had to be designed in a way that would be fit for school rather than for some international corporation or a bank, for example. So we took the international standard and we selected 29 out of the huge number included in the standard, which we believed were important, especially in the context of our project, that is prevention of cyberbullying. Well, here there are just a few examples. And these elements, according to our research, are especially important for our project. I'm not going to dwell on them. This list just signals one thing, and namely that a large part of our task should be related to education of adults who are responsible for the students. I mean, it's pretty easy to educate the teachers. How to educate parents? Well, I'm not the best person to talk about it. Now, what had we found based on the data? This time, it was more than somebody expressing their beliefs and convictions. of course, we were not able to fully analyze the data, but what have we been able to prove with the data? We have demonstrated that the most important problem faced by schools, and of course the situation of the schools differed. In some schools the situation was pretty good, but the basic problems faced was sharing of the resources, the risk of losing privacy. Well, we can of course discuss the reasons for that, but this is the fact. I mean, if students at school have the same accounts, they just log in as a student, this means that they can use the computer to do their homework, for example, but they can also search for different things on the internet, etc., etc. And they leave their secrets on the computers. And others log in later on and see those secrets. Sometimes just because they are there. Sometimes it's just hard not to notice what the previous user of the computer has left there. I mean, students sometimes cannot imagine the consequences of leaving something on your computer. Why is it so? Because schools organize the work like that. Only in 2 out of 10 schools we found pretty good solutions from 10 years ago, and one school had one new solution, however related to that from 10 years ago. We saw what schools could do, but as I've said, most of the schools have not done that. So in our project we are also going to focus on what guidelines, tips can be given to schools to cope better with the problem, especially in the situation of different reorganizations, etc. And this is my last slide, I promise. Also, as part of this qualitative studies that we've conducted, the questionnaires were distributed. We checked the knowledge of the students of gymnasia, and we tried to correlate this knowledge to our observations based on the computer data and the knowledge that we received from, or the information that we received from teachers. And actually the correlations were pretty interesting, even if the sample was not statistically significant. As for knowledge and computer skills, we have noticed selective lacks of computer knowledge. So this is also important in the context of cyberbullying problem. Keeping your computer safe, I mean, gymnasium students simply lack the skills there. They have bad habits, and bad habits means the susceptibility to different problems. You can be victimized, and you can become a perpetrator. Taking care of your own privacy, these are chaotic behaviors. So the risk of losing privacy is very high. Respect for the privacy of others. More than 20% of the students simply read the files left by the previous computer user. Well, this may be part of the paper done as a homework, but this may be also more sensitive information. And let's not deceive ourselves, 90% of the students at the gymnasium level, so it's actually a much higher percentage than 60% mentioned during the morning section. 90% of the students have access to the internet with no control from their parents at any time, any way they want to use it. And this is what we were told by the students. And this is the problem.
Thank you very, very much for the presentation. Okay, we are looking forward to the tool which is coming up next year. I would like to thank all the speakers because it's the final presentation today and because all the speakers have made it on time. We've got 15 minutes for questions and answers, so I would like to encourage everyone to come up with questions because we've got time for that. Yes? Okay, so let me begin by asking, perhaps it's going to entice the rest of you, my question to Professor Pyżalski about qualitative research, because it was just a snapshot. Is it fair to conclude from what junior high students are saying, cyber violence, did you have a positively resolved case? Perhaps support was most helpful, support from peers, parents or teachers. So this is my first question. Okay, so let's stop here for a minute. Okay, thank you. Let me put it this way. There are cases like that, but in most cases, well, first of all, it was revealed in my studies, and I've been researching this issue for a decade. We usually talk to young people after something has happened, so later we come up with workshops, we are putting out fires. So I think it's very clear, and it's been revealed by my research, that we start to communicate about different online behaviors with one people when things go awry. But what helps, to answer your question? So, will something stupid lead to something good? Yes, and we've got very strong cases of it in real life, beyond internet, that we are learning our lessons. And in most cyber violence cases, and I can say it responsibly after a decade of research, most cases don't need legal or police intervention. It just needs education. So what have we learned? It's used later in real life, and sometimes we have to combat with other people who want to go beyond communication. They want to start litigation. Well, we always try to take a responsible decision whether to stop with educational measures or should we report it to the police. You know, such cases are few and far between, but, you know, they do exist. For example, there was a case when the perpetrator, who knew from the start that he harmed someone, you know, sometimes they don't realize that. I was talking to a smart guy and I asked him, when did you get the idea, when did it spring to your mind that you did something wrong? He said 3 days later when this girl's mother came to school, and he did not realize that it would have serious implications. I think it's a tough job because, let me reiterate, this is something I've said in my speech. It's quite easy to identify those elements, but right now I think that we are at this point in time when things are most challenging. We know what to cure, but we don't know how. So it's a breakthrough moment. So what presents us with a major challenge, and we are thinking about it intensely, because you know what's the fundamental question? The ancients used to say, I know what's wrong, but I'm still heading in the same direction. So it's very often the case that we are focusing on education. We are preaching that cybercrime or cyber violence is wrong, to not much effect. If we ask young people about standards, you know, they are generally against cyber violence. We did a survey in over 12 schools in Łódź province, and most young people said that insulting other people online should be forbidden. But meanwhile, research reveals that there is a percentage of young people, you know, it's not the majority, who do things like that. So our qualitative research is present a response to your question, but how should we do it? What should we do to make people think before they do something bad? Social psychology is providing us with general questions, whereas we need detailed ones. So, you know, this is the main challenge. Okay, what we know for sure is that we want to avoid situations where we keep on providing young people with some knowledge. We want them to feel empowered. We want them to act, to learn new things, and very often they will be able to do what we preach. So we won't be just influencing them. Because tons of psychological studies prove that the biggest effect is provided not by conversations, not by persuasion, not by campaigns, but there is nothing more effective to educate than role models, modeling behaviors, shaping behaviors, teaching other people how they should behave. You know, it's a perpetuum mobile, but it requires absence of asymmetry. So the educator should preach, should do what he preaches. Okay, any other questions? A question to our German guest, who said that the German equivalent of the helpline, that there is the peer group. Okay, we need... Okay, can you repeat? Okay, let me repeat it. A question to you. You've mentioned the peer group in Germany, peers who are collaborating with you. Where do you get those young people? How are they trained? Who are they? What sort of age? What age group is it?
Well, they are 16 to 21-year-olds. It's like an own kind of project team. It's called Youth Counseling Youth. We've had it running for a while, I think 94, so it's been there for a while. Recruiting them is by just plain information. We are kind of well known in Germany, my organization. Many of them are students from school, so it's very often teachers, like presenting our work to classes. Also, our counselors do go to school to talk about the work the helpline is doing. Of course, always telling them the peer counseling project exists, and so very often they would just contact us. And of course, I was telling you about the local counseling centers. They all do like a local PR work, so they would put like an ad up in a newspaper announcing that they're looking for new counselors. They do new groups to be trained, I'd say like every year or every other year. It always depends on how much budget they have, of course. And they would put an ad in a newspaper saying, hey, we're starting a new team. Do you want to join? And then there's always like an information gathering kind of. So they would tell the youth everything about the project. And my colleague is coordinating it. And I really have to kind of think about how it all started, because I think that's kind of where you're going. But yeah, it's just school. I think school is a very important contact point, kind of. Also, we have a couple of other peer counseling projects in Germany that work pretty well. So maybe German youth are just very keen on doing it. Yeah, and many leave the service. Many leave the service when they're going to university, but many continue just on like the child helpline, but they kind of have to leave the peer counseling teams. And yeah, it's very well received. So Saturdays, the lines are really busy. I guess teens, there are many topics they'd rather talk to peers about. Is that okay for you?
Dziękujemy bardzo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mamy jeszcze czas.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. Okay, hello. It's not a question, but another thought. But perhaps you can respond to that. Okay. All of us have smartphones on our laps, and I've heard from our speaker from Germany that an 11-year-old was writing to her emails in the middle of the night, and she was responding, and we are meanwhile, talking about unlimited access of children to internet. And, someone else has mentioned today that we should be stowing away our smartphones. So what should I think of it all? Okay, so I think it reflects the complexity of the problem we are facing every day. Perhaps this points out to the need for such meetings. Okay, so thank you very much. I would like to thank all speakers and participants of this session.